12%. That's all I asked for. Scott Hamilton's laughter echoed through his corner office like I just told him the funniest joke he'd ever heard. You want a 12% raise after 16 years? He couldn't even finish the sentence before another wave of laughter hit him. I'm Kenneth Pearson, by the way, 51 years old, lead AI systems architect, and until that moment, the kind of guy who keeps his head down and lets his work speak for itself. Former Navy tech specialist turned civilian engineer. Spent my whole career believing that good work gets rewarded eventually. I stood there holding my portfolio of documentation, every AI algorithm, every automation protocol I'd developed over nearly 2 decades at TechCore Solutions here in Austin. The machine learning system I designed saved us $1.9 million last quarter alone, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The predictive maintenance algorithms for the Morrison Industries contract cut downtime by 78%. Scott waved his hand like he was swatting away a fly. Everyone's replaceable, Kenneth, even you. He leaned back in his leather chair, that Harvard MBA smirk plastered across his face. If you think you're worth more, feel free to test the market. That's when I knew what I had to do. See, what Scott never understood was what happened in the server rooms and development labs every day. While he was in board meetings talking about synergies and market positioning, I was down there with the guys writing the code that actually ran everything. Jason Martinez had been our lead robotics programmer for 8 years. Michelle Torres ran quality assurance with an eye that could spot bugs other developers missed completely. These weren't just employees to me. They were the people who made my systems work. My AI protocols didn't come from some computer science textbook. They came from watching Jason struggle with robot coordination bottlenecks during shift changes, from seeing Michelle catch errors that our expensive testing software missed, from understanding that the best innovations happen when you actually know how things work instead of just how they look on a dashboard. The automation system I developed for Morrison Industries wasn't just about efficiency metrics. It was about creating smart manufacturing that could adapt in real time. The old system required constant human intervention and broke down every few weeks. My redesign used predictive AI and self-correcting protocols. Productivity went up 28%, but more importantly, equipment failures dropped to nearly zero. I understand completely, I said, closing my portfolio. Thanks for clarifying where I stand. Listen, Kenneth, his voice softened with fake concern. You're good at what you do, but you're essentially a back-office function. The board barely knows your name. That's just business. Back-office function, right? Because apparently designing the AI systems that actually automate the entire production floor doesn't count as real business. I walked back to my desk past the glass offices of managers who'd been here half as long as me. My workstation sat in the corner of the development bay, surrounded by the servers and testing equipment I'd helped select and configure. This place had been home for 16 years. From my desk, I could see through the windows down to the manufacturing floor where second shift was just starting up. My computer screen showed the quarterly company newsletter featuring Scott's revolutionary automation breakthrough that had landed the Morrison Industries contract. My breakthrough, my 70-hour weeks for 9 months straight, my solution that cut their operating costs by 28% and made TechCore their exclusive automation provider. The article had a nice photo of Scott shaking hands with Morrison's procurement director. No mention of the architect who'd actually designed the systems that made it possible. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a worn leather notebook. Inside were my personal project notes from over the years, ideas I'd developed at home, algorithms I'd refined on my own laptop during weekends, innovations I'd documented meticulously with dates and development logs, things the company had implemented because I'd been too eager to prove myself, too willing to share without formal acquisition paperwork. I flipped to my notes from 5 years ago, the core AI protocols that became the backbone of our entire operation. At the top of the page in my own handwriting. Personal project, predictive manufacturing AI, developed at home, started March 15th, 2019. What Scott didn't know, what TechCore's legal team had never bothered to investigate, was that I'd never signed over the rights to my most valuable innovations. The standard employment contract covered work done during company hours using company resources. My breakthrough algorithms were documented as personal projects developed on my own time with my own equipment. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent my Navy years working on aircraft carrier automation systems, Everything there was about precision, reliability, and understanding that people's lives depended on getting the details right. When I transitioned to civilian tech, I brought that same mindset. Every system I designed wasn't just about numbers on a report. It was about creating something that actually worked in the real world. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a contact I'd saved but never called. Rebecca Coleman, CEO of Phoenix Dynamics, our biggest competitor in the automation space. She'd reached out several times over the years through LinkedIn and industry conferences. Her last message, sent 3 months ago, "The offer stands whenever you're ready, Kenneth. We need innovators who understand real automation." My finger hovered over the call button. 16 years of loyalty screamed at me to stop. Then I remembered Scott's laughter. I pressed call. "Rebecca Coleman speaking. This is Kenneth Pearson from TechCore Solutions. I think it's time we had that conversation you mentioned. Kenneth, I was starting to think you'd never call. Are you free for dinner tonight?" 3 hours later, I sat across from Rebecca at Salt Traders Coastal Cooking downtown. She'd made the reservation with one phone call. The place had white tablecloths and a view of Lady Bird Lake. Not exactly my usual scene, but Rebecca seemed comfortable here. "I've been following your work for years," Rebecca said, cutting into her steak. "The sudden improvements in TechCore's automation metrics, the patent applications that mysteriously appeared after gaps in your conference presentations. Those predictive AI systems for Morrison Industries were revolutionary. How did you know that was my work?" Rebecca smiled. "Because Scott Hamilton couldn't code his way out of a basic spreadsheet, let alone develop sophisticated AI protocols. When we tried to reverse engineer your systems and failed, that's when I knew we needed the brain behind them." She wasn't wrong. Scott's background was all finance and marketing. His father had founded TechCore back in the 90s, and Scott had grown up expecting to inherit the business. When the old man retired 4 years ago, Scott stepped right into the CEO role, never spent a day debugging code, never understood how the algorithms actually worked. "What exactly are you offering?" I asked. "CTO position, double your current salary, equity package, your own development team." She leaned forward. "But more importantly, recognition. Your name on your patents, proper credit for your innovations." The recognition part hit different than the money. Don't get me wrong, doubling my salary would be life-changing, but having my name on the work I'd actually done, that meant something. I placed my notebook on the table. "I have documentation proving these systems were personal projects. TechCore implemented them, but never formally acquired the intellectual property." Rebecca's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. "That's quite an oversight on their legal department's part." "Scott doesn't value back-office functions," I said, "including legal oversight, apparently." We talked for another hour about technical specifics. Rebecca knew her stuff. She'd started as a systems engineer herself before moving into management. When I explained the neural network modifications I'd developed for predictive maintenance, she immediately understood the cost-saving implications. When I described the machine learning algorithms I'd written for quality control, she asked smart questions about training datasets and accuracy rates. This was what I'd been missing at TechCore, someone who actually understood the engineering behind the business decisions. 2 weeks. That's what I told her. I needed 2 weeks to wrap up my current projects and make the transition clean. Rebecca agreed, but I could see she was eager to get started. Phoenix Dynamics had been losing ground to TechCore for the past 3 years, ever since my innovations had gone live. Now, she had a chance to turn that around. The drive home gave me time to think. 16 years is a long time at one company. I knew every corner of that facility, every quirk of every server. I'd trained most of the current development staff. Hell, I'd helped design the network architecture when they expanded the data center in 2020. But loyalty has to work both ways. I'd given TechCore the best years of my career, and Scott had just made it clear that meant nothing to him. The next morning, I started preparing my transition. First step was documenting everything I'd officially developed for TechCore versus my personal projects. The company owned plenty of my work: standard process improvements, system specifications, training materials. But the core innovations that had transformed their automation capabilities, those were mine. I spent the weekend going through my files, both at work and at home. The pattern was clear. Every major breakthrough had started as a personal project. I'd develop the concept at home, test it on my own laptop, then bring it to work as a proposed improvement. TechCore had been happy to implement my ideas, but they'd never bothered with the paperwork to actually acquire them. My biggest concern was the development team. Jason, Michelle, and the rest of the crew hadn't done anything wrong. They were good people who just wanted to write good code and take care of their families. If TechCore struggled after I left, they'd be the ones to suffer. But I also knew that Phoenix Dynamics had a better reputation for treating their engineers fairly. Rebecca had mentioned they were looking to expand their Texas operations. Maybe there would be opportunities for the good people at TechCore if things went south. Monday morning arrived with typical office noise, the hum of servers starting up, the familiar sounds I'd been hearing for 16 years. I walked through the development lab before heading to my office, checking on the weekend deployment results, saying hello to the early crew. Everything was running smooth. The systems I designed were working exactly as intended. The Morrison Industries line was operating at 99.4% uptime. The new predictive algorithms had prevented 3 potential equipment failures over the weekend. The machine learning protocols were optimizing production schedules in real time. It was good work I was proud of, and Scott thought it was replaceable. I spent the next week quietly completing my documentation. Every personal project was cataloged with development dates, algorithm iterations, and implementation records. I made copies of all the emails where I'd offered to let TechCore formally acquire my innovations. Scott's dismissive responses were particularly interesting reading. One email from 2021 read, "Just implement it if it works. We'll handle the paperwork later." That paperwork had never materialized. The legal research took some time, but the conclusion was clear. My personal intellectual property had never been transferred to TechCore. They'd implemented my systems based on my recommendations, but they'd never completed any acquisition process. It was sloppy corporate governance, the kind of oversight that happens when leadership doesn't value the technical details. By the end of the week, I had everything I needed: documentation, legal clarity, and a plan for moving forward. Friday afternoon, I typed up my resignation letter. Saturday morning, I called Rebecca Coleman. "I'm ready," I said when she answered. "Excellent. Can you start Monday? Give me 2 weeks to do this right. But yes, I'm coming to Phoenix Dynamics." There was satisfaction in her voice when she responded. "Welcome to the team, Kenneth. This is going to be interesting." Monday morning, I walked into Scott's office with my resignation letter. He was staring at his computer screen, probably reviewing the latest quarterly projections that looked good thanks to the systems I'd built. 2 weeks' notice, he said, barely glancing at the document. "Where are you heading?" I thought about lying, but decided honesty would have more impact. Phoenix Dynamics. That got his attention. His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "Our competitor? That's unfortunate timing. We're in final negotiations with Morrison Industries to expand our contract." "I know. I designed the automation protocols for that proposal." Scott's expression shifted from casual dismissal to genuine concern. The color drained from his face as he realized what this meant. "We should discuss retention options. Perhaps that raise you mentioned. Phoenix Dynamics is offering double my salary plus CTO position and equity package." He forced a laugh, but it sounded hollow now. "They're overpaying. You'll be disappointed when reality sets in." "We'll see," I said, and walked out. My last 2 weeks at TechCore were strange. Word got around quickly that I was leaving for Phoenix Dynamics. Some people were shocked. Others said they saw it coming. Jason Martinez pulled me aside on Tuesday. "You really going to the competition, Ken?" "Yeah, Jason. It's time." He nodded slowly. "Can't say I blame you. Scott's been taking credit for your work since day one. We all know who really designed these systems. That meant something. The development team knew. They'd always known." I spent those final days completing my transition documents and training my replacement, a bright kid named Ryan Fletcher, fresh out of UT's computer science program. He was eager but terrified, which I understood. The systems he was inheriting were complex. "The neural network parameters alone have 73 different variables," I explained, walking him through the main automation dashboard. "Each subsystem is calibrated for specific manufacturing processes and production schedules. You change one setting without understanding the downstream effects and you'll have bottlenecks within an hour." Ryan took notes frantically. "How long did it take you to learn all this?" "Years," I said, honestly. "But don't worry. The documentation is solid and the team knows these systems inside and out. Listen to them. They'll teach you things no computer science textbook ever could." I also quietly backed up all my personal project documentation and made copies of the email chains where I'd offered to let TechCore acquire my innovations. Scott's responses were particularly telling. The pattern was clear, dismissive, arrogant, always pushing acquisition discussions to later that never came. On Thursday of my final week, I met with Brian Foster, TechCore's legal counsel, for the standard exit interview. Just routine paperwork, he assured me, sliding documents across his desk. Non-compete agreement, confidentiality clauses, confirmation you're not taking company property. I reviewed everything carefully. The non-compete wasn't in my original employment contract, and I wasn't signing it now. As for company property, I was taking only what belonged to me. I'm not signing the non-compete, I told Foster. It wasn't part of my original agreement. It's standard procedure now, he said, looking uncomfortable. Not for me. And regarding company property, I'm taking my personal intellectual property that was never formally acquired by TechCore. What personal property? Foster's expression tightened. I opened my notebook, showing him the dated entries. These AI systems were developed on my personal time using my own resources. TechCore implemented them but never completed any acquisition process. I have the documentation to prove it. Foster flipped through my notebook, his face growing pale. These are the core systems we use for everything. Yes, they are, I said calmly. He stared at me, then at the notebook. I need to make some calls. Of course, but my employment ends Friday, and my personal property leaves with me. Friday afternoon arrived gray and humid, typical Texas weather for late spring. I cleaned out my desk, said goodbye to the development team, and walked through the facility one last time. The servers hummed with the efficiency I'd helped create. The automated systems moved with the precision of algorithms I'd designed. It was good work, even if Scott had never appreciated it. Michelle Torres was running final tests on the Morrison Industries deployment. She looked up when she saw me. "Heard you're leaving us," she said. "New opportunities, Michelle. But these systems will keep running smooth. You know them better than anyone." She smiled. "Take care of yourself, Ken, and good luck with whatever comes next." I walked out of TechCore Solutions at 5:30 p.m. carrying a box with my personal items and 16 years of memories. My truck started on the first try, same as always. Some things never change. Monday morning at Phoenix Dynamics felt like stepping into the future. Their facility was newer, better organized, with cutting-edge equipment and clean development spaces. Rebecca Coleman met me at reception personally. "Welcome to Phoenix Dynamics, Kenneth. Ready to change the automation industry?" My new office had windows overlooking their main development floor. Real windows, not the interior glass partitions I'd gotten used to at TechCore. I could see their current automation setup and immediately spotted areas for improvement. The system architecture looked like it had been designed by committee. The AI protocols were basic, maybe 5 years behind current capabilities. The predictive maintenance algorithms were rudimentary at best. Rebecca introduced me to my team, 15 engineers ranging from recent graduates to industry veterans. They were eager to learn what I'd brought from TechCore, but I had bigger plans than just copying old systems. "We're not here to recreate TechCore's processes," I told them during our first team meeting. "We're here to build something better, something that TechCore can't match, even if they tried." Over the next 9 months, we redesigned Phoenix Dynamics' entire automation approach. The AI principles I'd developed were just the starting point. We integrated next-generation machine learning, improved predictive analytics, and implemented real-time optimization that adapted to changing conditions automatically. The results were immediate and impressive. Production efficiency jumped 28%. Operating costs dropped 22%. System uptime improved across every product line, but more importantly, workplace satisfaction surveys showed significant improvement. The engineers were excited to work on cutting-edge technology instead of maintaining legacy systems. Our sales team noticed. They started approaching clients with performance data that TechCore couldn't match. The demonstrations were impressive. Our new systems could adapt to production changes in real time, something TechCore's rigid protocols couldn't handle. Then Morrison Industries announced they were switching their contract to Phoenix Dynamics. My phone started buzzing. Scott's name flashed on the screen 6 times before he left a message. "Kenneth, this is Scott. We need to discuss consulting opportunities immediately. TechCore is prepared to offer substantial compensation. Please call me back." I saved the message, but didn't return the call. 3 days later, Scott was waiting by my car in the Phoenix Dynamics parking garage. The confident CEO swagger was gone. He looked tired, older somehow. "This is inappropriate," I said, keeping my distance. "You've put 300 jobs at risk," he said, his voice urgent. "TechCore is facing a crisis because of what you took." I didn't take anything that belonged to TechCore. I took my personal intellectual property that TechCore used without proper acquisition. Nobody will believe that. It looks like corporate theft. I have dated documentation of every project, every implementation, every conversation where ownership was never transferred. Your legal team never did their job properly. Scott stepped closer. "Name your price. Whatever Phoenix Dynamics is paying, we'll triple it." I thought about those 16 years sitting at my desk while he took credit for my work. About his laughter when I asked for basic recognition. "You once told me everyone's replaceable, even me. I'm just following your business philosophy." The next quarter's results were devastating for TechCore. Without the Morrison Industries contract, they lost 42% of their revenue. Their stock dropped 38% in 10 weeks. The board started asking hard questions about how they'd become so dependent on systems they didn't actually own. Industry publications ran stories about TechCore's mysterious technical collapse. Automation Today called it a catastrophic loss of institutional knowledge. The Wall Street Journal described it as a case study in poor intellectual property management. Nobody mentioned Scott's laughter in his corner office, but the message was clear. Companies that don't value their talent pay the price. TechCore laid off 240 employees. I watched the announcement from my office while reviewing expansion plans for Phoenix Dynamics' new automotive division. Each name on the layoff list was someone I'd worked with, someone I respected. Jason Martinez, Michelle Torres, good people who didn't deserve to suffer for Scott's arrogance. That's when Rebecca and I had a serious conversation about corporate responsibility. "We can't just celebrate TechCore's failure," I told her. "These are real people with families and mortgages." "What do you have in mind?" she asked. Phoenix Dynamics launched Operation Opportunity the following week. We committed to interviewing every qualified former TechCore employee for positions we couldn't fill immediately. We partnered with regional tech companies to create placement services for experienced engineers. We offered consulting contracts that provided bridge income until people found permanent positions. Jason Martinez became my lead systems architect for predictive maintenance. Michelle Torres joined our quality assurance team as a senior engineer. Within 6 months, we'd hired 89 former TechCore employees. The local business press called it innovative competitor displacement strategy. But for me, it was just doing right by people who'd supported my work for years. Then came the lawsuit. TechCore sued me for theft of intellectual property and corporate sabotage. Their legal team filed extensive documentation claiming I'd stolen proprietary automation systems. Scott gave interviews to trade publications about protecting American companies from industrial espionage. The case fell apart during discovery. My dated documentation proved every major innovation had originated as a personal project. The email chains showed Scott explicitly dismissing the need for formal IP acquisition. Most damaging was a recorded board meeting where Scott had boasted about getting brilliant engineering work without paying acquisition costs. The judge dismissed the case with prejudice, noting TechCore's failure to secure proper ownership of innovations they'd implemented. The legal fees alone cost TechCore another $1.2 million they couldn't afford. 15 months later, TechCore filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Scott was forced to resign. The board brought in turnaround specialists, but it was too late. Phoenix Dynamics had captured most of their market share, and other competitors had moved into the gaps. Today, I sit in my CTO office at Phoenix Dynamics, looking out at our expanded development floor. My team has grown to 32 engineers. We hold 19 patents with my name prominently listed. Industry awards line my bookshelf. But the real satisfaction comes from seeing Jason Martinez mentoring new developers, watching Michelle Torres lead critical projects, knowing that good people found better opportunities. Sometimes young engineers ask me when they should stand up for themselves. My answer is simple. Don't wait 16 years like I did. Know your worth. Document your contributions, and never let anyone convince you that good work doesn't deserve recognition. 16 years of loyalty should mean something. When it doesn't, sometimes the most powerful response is proving them wrong. I learned something important through all this. Loyalty has to work both ways. I spent too many years waiting for recognition that never came, believing that good work alone would be enough. The truth is, some people will never value what you bring to the table, no matter how essential your contributions are. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away and find people who actually appreciate your worth. It took me 16 years to figure that out, but it was worth the wait to finally land somewhere that values innovation over politics. The view from the top is pretty good when you've earned your place here.